Well, good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us. This is an important event we're doing here, and we were just speaking a few minutes ago. This is not just a ceremonial. These ceremonial signing ceremonies are far bigger than that. It's an opportunity for us to get together with all of the authors of these important pieces of legislation, and more importantly, I think, and especially on this piece we're talking about today, with the advocates who made this happen, and then to talk about today, because today is the day this piece of legislation is gone into effect. How do we do the implementation of this? We're going to do things just a little bit differently today because Commissioner Laurie and Lieutenant Governor Flanagan are going to be moving in and out. So I will move here directly to signing this piece of legislation. We'll come back up. This is the time where I want the authors and the advocates who are going to speak to spend a little bit of time talking about implementation and things that would happen. I do want to make note that there are two very important people who, due to conflicts, were not able to be with us today. Representative Baker and Senator Rosen had other events that they had to be at, but I think obviously it almost goes with these two without saying that they were instrumental in making this happen, that they brought a voice in Representative Baker's case, a passion and a voice that made this happen. So a lot of things happening here. We're going to talk about the details of how this happens, but I'm going to do something that brings it's a great privilege for me to be a part of this team that made this happen, to sign this piece of legislation on hopefully reducing opioid deaths, educating Minnesotans about this, and hopefully in the future avoiding the tragedy that some of the folks up here, and you'll be hearing from them and Senator Eaton of what this means. So we'll sign it into law, and we'll come back with the Lieutenant Governor, who also has exciting news. So. Yeah. For each of the advocates here, we have one of these for you, but I am incredibly grateful, and I'd just like to, before we go back to Lieutenant Governor, this piece of legislation, Chapter 63, House File 400, relating to the health, establishing the Opioid Product Registration Fee and the Opioid Epidemic Response Advisory Council. This was many years in the making. This was many tragedies and heartbreaks in the making. And this is a visionary piece of legislation that took bringing in manufacturers, bringing in advocates, bringing in the medical community, bringing in law enforcement, all with the idea that we want to avoid those tragedies and make sure that when we do dispense these incredibly powerful drugs, they are done in a way that makes sure that they reduce pain but does not cause addiction. And so I am just proud to say, as of today, this is the law in effect. We'll come back with Lieutenant Governor Flanagan. And for the press here, we'll go all the way through with the advocates who are going to speak. We'll do question and answers on this piece of legislation, and then we will take time for just regular press availability.
Good afternoon, everybody. Today is a really powerful day, and we're so grateful to have so many people here whose lives have been impacted by this issue. In fact, I don't know one person whose life hasn't been impacted by this issue. And so I am incredibly grateful to the bill authors and the advocates, and in particular to the moms who put in the work, and because of their love for their children, that deep, fierce mom love, that we may be able to prevent tragedies from affecting other families across Minnesota. Today, I'm proud that Governor Walz signed this bill into law, a law that works towards prevention, education, and treatment for those affected by the opioid crisis, a law that holds drug companies accountable, a law that moves Minnesota forward, and a law that contains dollars for traditional healing that is targeted to Native American communities, a community that is impacted significantly by the opioid crisis. You will hear a lot of stories today, a lot of painful stories, but I hope that you'll carry them with you as you leave this room, to know of the pain and the sacrifice, but also the hope that so many of these advocates are bringing into this work and helping us to move forward as a state to say not one more. And the last thing that I will say is the governor and I spent time on Saturday night traveling to 2 shelters in the Twin Cities area, as well as a encampment. And many of the folks that we spoke to were battling opioid addiction. And this bill will not do what it's supposed to do unless the individuals that we spoke with on Saturday night will also feel the impact of this important legislation. So thank you so much, everyone, for the work that you have done, and thank you for the work that we will do together. And with that, I'd like to introduce Commissioner Laurie.
Well, thank you, Governor Walz, Lieutenant Governor Flanagan. I am the Department of Human Services Commissioner, Tony Laurie, and I am absolutely thrilled to be here today. I have worked on this with my colleagues in both the House and the Senate in my time prior to Commissioner. We've been working on this for a number of years. We've seen far too many tragedies, and we have so many things that we need to do in this space. This bill is a huge step forward. A couple of additional things, though, that I will highlight in this space. Just on Friday, Minnesota was one of 2 states to have a really groundbreaking 1115 substance use disorder waiver passed by CMS. I hope that folks saw the release on that. This is something that the legislature worked on this year as well. It will give our certified community behavioral health clinics, which treat mental health and chemical dependency together, one-stop shopping, treating the whole person, moving Minnesota forward. We were one of 8 demonstration states and demonstrated that we can do a lot better than we have. That was approved on Friday. Today, for the Opioid Stewardship Fee Advisory Council, those postings are at the Secretary of State. I hope everyone takes a good look and we get just a phenomenal set of candidates forwarded. We look for, I think they stay posted until the 22nd, and we will be appointing those members and moving forward. And the waiver from the feds is going to do so much more than just CCBHC. It's also going to help us support those substance use providers that are working today with additional federal funds, and really beginning to allow us to treat the whole person rather than the silos that we have historically. We're going to be, with this bill and the funds made available, able to focus on the treatment side, the prevention side, as well as some of the downstream effects, including a large investment in child welfare. One of the, the tertiary effects, we know that the out-of-home placements have gone through the roof as a result of some of the substance use disorder problems that our families are facing. We're going to be able to do all that, and we're going to be able to focus significantly on some of the disparities. Lieutenant Governor Flanagan mentioned the traditional healing grants. There's $4 million set aside to make sure that we allow for some of the historical trauma practices built into the traditional healing model that can help some of our most disproportionately affected communities. These are all things that were made possible by my friends and former colleagues, Senator Eaton. Senator Rosen is not here. Representative Baker and I have had a long partnership on this. Representative Olson and I have worked diligently, and I just want to thank all of the legislators, all of the stakeholders, and Governor Walz and Lieutenant Governor Flanagan for the tremendous efforts. And really, this is a day of celebration, but it's also, a day of a lot of tears and thinking about what got us here. And we need to be laser focused on not just this one piece. You know, the opioid crisis wasn't created by one thing in one day. We're going to have a whole toolbox, and I think that this bill really sets up a foundation for us to approach it in a multi-pronged, a really sophisticated manner, and I want to thank everybody who played a role.
Thank you.
And with that, Commissioner Hartman.
My name is Melissa Hartman. It's my honor to be the Speaker of the House of the Minnesota House of Representatives. And you know, the credit for today goes to the families who stepped forward and shared their stories of their lost loved ones, especially our friend Senator Eaton and Representative Dave Baker. But politics and policy are two sides of the same coin, and you know this was not easy to pass, and that there are very powerful, moneyed interests that did everything they could to make sure that these families would not see this day and that this legislation would not ultimately be signed into law. And you will see really incredible spending in the 2020 election by the people who most fiercely fought this every step of the way. And so just as we celebrate the policy victories, it's important to remember that policy and politics are two sides of the same coin. Without the families, we wouldn't be here, but without the incredible leadership of Majority Whip Liz Olson on behalf of the Minnesota House of Representatives, we wouldn't be here. We had Representative Baker working so hard uphill last term, and to have Leader Liz Olson bring it across the finish line took Herculean effort. And I know everybody on the conference committee, every member of the legislature felt the oppressive presence of lobbyists flown in from all over the country and the incredible pressure on them not to act and not to be brave, not to be bold. And I'm just very grateful for the service of those members who brought us this legislation. Thank you.
Liz Olson.
Liz Olson.
Thank you, Representative.
Yeah. Good afternoon. I'm Majority Whip Liz Olson, and proud to be here today. And just want to say that on our best day, Minnesotans really care about one another. And this legislation is an example of Minnesotans caring about one another. And that is foremost of what we're here today. And I just want to say, you know, it's an honor to be able to be here and to be the vehicle to be someone who brought this legislation forward. But it really is the stories of the families and the advocates and the people at the front line that on my drive down with my family, I told them story after story, and the tears that were shed at the testifier table, in my office, over the phone. This was a lot of effort, but it was really because of all of the people right here that made this happen, and that's why we're here. And I spoke with Representative Dave Baker this morning, and it shouldn't be a surprise to anyone. The reason he's not here is because he's actually visiting Project Turnabout today and doing some frontline work, because he's not going to stop until this crisis ends and we don't lose one more life. And that's why we're all here today. And so this is the day it goes into effect. This is the day we work to get it right. This is the day that we all commit ourselves to doing more, to make sure that we do everything that we've set out to do and then some. Because we didn't get everything done, but we got a lot done. We have a significant amount of revenue that we're now devoting to this that we didn't have before. That's a major victory. We have many policy pieces in here that I think even got overlooked because of how big of a bill this was and how significant even those small policy pieces would have been. But because of the volume of what we did in this bill, we have yet to see all of the impacts this will have. So this is a great day. It's a great day to be a Minnesotan. It's a great day to be leading our nation. It's a great day to be here. It's a great day to lift up the stories and the voices of those. And finally, some of our folks don't have to keep driving to the Capitol. This is the last day, Shelley, hopefully not for this, that we're signing this, and this is the day it goes into effect. So thank you all for all your work on this.
Thank you. Yep.
Thank you. Well, I can't tell you how much this means to me. Lexi Reed Holtom and I started this bill over 3 years ago, and it's been a lot of work. As they said, we got a lot of pressure from a lot of interest groups, and I will say that probably our biggest ally in all this was the opioid manufacturers and distributors, because they angered Senator Rosen so much that every time she talked to them, she came more determined to pass this bill with me. So I'm grateful to him for that. There's a lot of people who lost family members who drove umpteen miles, especially Shelley Elkington, and who lost her beautiful daughter, Cassie Jo. And we all have our stories. My daughter left us in 2007, and I know that she's here and she's very proud of the work we're doing. So I guess I'm done.
We're going to have Lexi speak.
Thank you, Governor. Just an honor and a privilege. I'm just really blown away by the fact that we got it done. And today, and I've never been so proud in my life to work with such a dedicated team of people all the way around this room. Everywhere I look are people that showed up because they are committed to making sure that we have better public health and safety in our state. And I will tell you this much, we have 20 different states that we're helping to pass this similar legislation in their states right now, because what we did here is a first. And everybody should be just tremendously proud. Today is the 8-year anniversary today of Steve's death. And he was my fiance, and rather than planning our wedding, I ended up planning his funeral. And it is just such an honor and a privilege to get to do this work with all of you. And I'm so humbled and so grateful. And I can't even tell you, the House, led by these women, is just blows my mind at how proud I am. And Senator Eaton, in her capacity to take a step back so that a Republican author could lead this, because what's important is getting it done, not which party is it getting to be up front. And Governor and Lieutenant Governor, we could not be more proud to have you lead our state, and thank you so much for making this a priority. I appreciate everything, and my lovely daughter Isabella, who does not want to be in front of the camera, who tolerated everything for years. And I just, honey, I love you, I'm proud of you, and thank you for coming.
Shelley, we have you. I'm sorry. They moved it out of here, so I was waiting for you. I thought you were bringing this home.
Oh, good. I'm Shelley Elkington. It's so hard to explain how I feel today. For all these people here, I lost my daughter, Cassie Jo, on August 19th, 2015. About 4 months after she died, I was scooped up by Lexi and her team of miracle workers at the Steve Rumler Hope Network, and they saved my life. So gratitude, mostly gratitude today. I wasn't gonna cry. But I'm also exhausted. It's an exhausting process navigating a political system that's a little bit more geared towards people who are used to it than people who are not. But I really want to encourage citizen advocates to show up and to come down here and drive a lot. So there was this day called the polar vortex. I don't know if you remember that, but my dear friend Amanda and I and her daughter drove down here, and it was miserable. And I thought, what the heck am I doing? This is crazy. But you know, you had to do it. We had to do it because we knew people were counting on us to show up and to be here. And it's because of this outcome right here. I honestly am still a little unsure this is happening. I'll be honest. From day one, the message was clear that we were going to hold Big Pharma accountable in the state of Minnesota. That message was never lost. It wasn't easy. It was a Goliath industry. There were times I was afraid. I'm not going to lie. My husband would be afraid, saying, "Are you sure? Are you sure this is what you should be doing?" And I said, somebody has to do it. We have to do it. And they tried hard, just like Speaker Hortman said. They were here every day. We were here. We knew who they were. We could see them, and they knew who we were. But you know what? That pharma greed stole my daughter from me. They stole a future. They stole a generation from us. They are responsible, and the work we did here is the result of determination, perseverance, anger, grief, and passion. Without that, this could not have happened. This bill is for the people who are still alive, the people you've seen at the shelter, the people in my community who call me and write me every week because they need help. They're struggling. I have so many stories I could give, but just trust me, this bill is very much needed. There's people who work on the front lines of this, like David and Randy, who see this every day. They'll tell you how much this is needed. But we cannot forget those we're lost, like Casey Joe, Ariel, Dan, Steve, Dylan, Ian, Aaron, Charles, Josh, Sam, Keaton, and our dear friend Prince. Thank you. We could go on and on. There are many, many more. I'm tired, but I'm looking forward to the implementation of this bill. I'm excited to see it play out. I was talking to Representative Olson. This is not just a bill. This is the most tremendous piece of policy. This is a lot of work that's going to go into this. There's a lot of fragments of this that are going to really be interesting for Commissioner Laurie, probably. But, I'm really excited about it. And, I work at times with Senator Klobuchar, and I tell you that people on the federal level are watching what we're doing. And we have talked a lot about it. And I wouldn't be surprised someday if this will be what we'll see nationwide, thanks to the good work here. Thank you.
Dr. Resnikoff is going to give us a little bit on this. After we finish on this, we'll come back to question and answers. So, thank you. Thank you.
Yeah. That's powerful stuff to follow. I want to thank the Governor Walz for the work he did, both for inviting me here and the work he did supporting and signing this bill into law. Also, Chris Heaton, Julie Rosen, Dave Baker, Liz Olson have been amazing, collaborating to get this done. It was not easy. There were compromises on both sides. I think it really took courage. And I watching it from afar, it was exciting and scary to watch this all happen from afar. And I was, the outcome is amazing. So everyone involved deserves thanks for getting this done. And I really believe this law will improve the health of Minnesotans. The change in licensing fee to drug manufacturers has attracted a lot of attention. It's important. But this law does, and other similar opioid legislation this year in the omnibus, does a lot besides that. School nurses and volunteer firefighters can save lives with naloxone. Pharmacists can give out important medications directly to patients in pharmacies. This improves education on opioid disposal. This makes the right medication go to the right people in the right time by having a photo ID and by narrowing the expiration date of the opioid prescriptions. As a doctor, importantly to me, this law has expectations on medical providers. Important expectations. We should be checking the prescription monitoring program. We should be limiting the number of days of opioids we give. We should be continuing to educate ourselves about opioids and pain. I mean, this is important stuff. It is, obviously, it's always risky to legislate medicine. But I think a really good balance was struck here, allowing physicians to individualize care in special circumstances with patients. I think almost all Minnesota medical providers are going to examine and change their practice because of this law, and that's a good thing. My read is that the medical community is ready to step up and to be part of the solution. And so I'm very happy about that. And I want to end with a story. This morning, I was in Rice County, Minnesota in an addiction clinic that I go to, and I met with a woman who I've been seeing there, and she told me, I told her about this, and I said, what's your experience? And she told me that her opioid addiction started after the birth of her first child, when she was given 180 Vicodin in one bottle with a refill. And she told me, I think my doc just didn't know what to do with me, which is interesting to hear. She developed a terrible addiction. Luckily for her, and to her credit, she's about to celebrate 9 years of recovery. So, I've met her daughter, I've met her husband. It's incredible working with patients like that. But in hearing her, I reflected, this bill actually corrects many of the things that may have triggered her addiction in the first place. And that gave me so much excitement and hope for this bill. So anyways, in closing, I'm very proud to be a Minnesotan today, and I'm very happy to be here. Thank you very much.
Well, in just a moment, we'll take some question and answers, but I think what is evident here is the triumph of the human spirit once again. I've said this on several other occasions at these bill signings, to watch families take unspeakable tragedy and how easy it might be to collapse in. But these are folks that did not collapse in. They reached out and they made sure that they did something to protect other families. And the advocates here, and you heard it, and from a medical perspective, one of the first pieces of legislation I had the privilege of working on as a new congressman back in 2007 was in the VA, and it was the step pain management legislation that was starting to deal with exactly this of on the front end, the things that you just heard talked about. How do we go about having a plan of how do we end these? These are powerful drugs that do powerful things and are needed at times, but you hear these stories of no thought what that was going to do, and it's simply unacceptable now. And while I'm proud that Minnesota is leading the way on this, these folks up here have known about this for years or decades, and we made the step forward. So I'm incredibly proud of them. We know, and I have faith in the folks who are up here. Commissioner Laurie has my full support. The implementation of this is going to be critical. Otherwise, it is a piece of paper until it starts to impact. So our commitment as an administration is full implementation, continuing to see this as a first step and continuing to work with these advocates who made this happen. So with that, those who are willing to, I will answer any questions you have of me, but if it's specific of the advocates who've spoke or maybe others, please ask. So go right ahead.
Governor, the commissioner spoke to this a little bit, but can you speak to the role this advisory council will play in distributing this funding moving forward and what that role is going to be?
Yeah, and the commissioner will be putting out more information, but it was critical. We've been working in the weeks leading up to this to make sure we were ready for the rollout. And again, I think you've seen it in this administration. We rely really heavily on the experts around us. We believe in this idea of building the advisory councils of folks who will know to make sure as we move forward that the stakeholders who are involved are engaged in the decisions we're making. And I think our expectations of the commissioner and the agency is to make sure that those voices are being heard on the front end of implementation, and that the letter and spirit of what the legislators and the experts did is what is implemented into law.
You and several others have called this a first step. What does the legislature need to do to take a second step?
Yeah, I don't know if any legislators want to speak. There were things that we advocated. I think Liz, yeah, please.
Well, I would say that there, with the bills as they came to a point of compromise, different things fell out of each sides of the bill that I would say we're interested in working on. Both Senator Rosen and I have spoken that one of the things we did not capture in the funding mechanism of this was the opioid distributors, which play a big part in this as well, and are something that we left on the table in the compromise. And I think there's a set of folks that are very interested in going back and approaching that again next session. I think we weren't, there is more to be done in the upstream. A big portion of the funding went to, as we've heard, which notably needs to go towards the counties and the out-of-home child placements, but that did take a serious portion of the fund and dedicated, and so there's more we could do as well in the upstream work that we could be looking towards, and I know that's something important to Senator Eaton, but I think those are a couple of things that we know, because of the way the bill was compromised, are still left on the table to be figured out in the future.
I would just say, too, I had, for me, it's fascinating in this of not having received one of these prescriptions very often. I was given one last week after I had my surgery, but I was also given a packet to deactivate these drugs and explained exactly how to use them. And when it became apparent that I did not need to use the prescription at all, I disposed of those immediately instead of the simple act of leaving it in a medicine cabinet where there's children in the house and others. And that is, that's an amazing thing. So it's amazing how those types of things make a difference, and it's just the education piece. So thankful for that.
I'm over.
Yes.
Oklahoma won a settlement from some of the manufacturers recently. They've just received a letter from the federal government saying that the federal government will be requesting and demanding a cut of that settlement because of the expenses that they have borne over the years. Can you speak to that?
Yeah, I've not seen this where the federal government's responded. I don't think at this point in time, I'm prepared to do that. Again, the settlement that was received from the harm that was done, our goal is, and of course the courts are an avenue for anyone, states and individuals, to pursue. I think our goal in this legislation was separate from that, to get out ahead and to do some of the preventive. So I'm not really prepared, Peter, at this time to respond on that.
Any other questions, folks?
Governor Walz, my wife is Senator Eaton, so I have a very vested interest in this issue. But I too would think this is a first step. The billions and billions of dollars that went to the pharmaceuticals, the billions of dollars that our counties, our state have spent on this issue. This is just the start of trying to resolve it. This is just the drop in the bucket.
No, I think so too. And one of the things you hear us continuously as an administration talk about is approaching individuals and problems holistically. And again, this issue of addiction coupled with the addition of homelessness, all of the other issues, that you can't solve one without the other. And I appreciate the Lieutenant Governor saying that, because we're not going to get at some of those issues. So I hope I hear you on this. I think the administration, I would argue this group up here clearly hears you, that we need to approach it holistically. But I do think what's unique about this is it was the step through the door. It went to that. And some of you recall this, and the reporters who were in the room, I came up here, I believe it was in early February, and I probably still had dark hair and hadn't been in the job. A new baby governor coming in here, and I said, I just got off the phone with the CEOs and some of the leading folks of all of the pharmaceutical manufacturers, and pretty much how that conversation went is this is going to happen in Minnesota, and you need to wrap your mind around that this is coming, and you can choose to be a part of the solution, or you can be a part of the obstacle. I think the speaker might say they chose a middle ground in there, but which may be true, but the point being that I knew that start point needed to happen. I knew we needed to get something done with the experts who were there, but with a commitment, because again, it's not the legislation that's the end. This is a means to an end. The end of this is making sure that we prescribe these powerful drugs, they are appropriately prescribed, they're appropriately used, they're disposed of, and people who shouldn't or do not need them don't get them. That's the goal. And we know that this alone's not going to do that. I don't think anybody's up here is naive. It's that part. So I appreciate that comment.
Governor, I'm proud to be a Minnesotan.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody.